the Executive Director.
Correct, thank you.
And we're going to be talking all things housing today.
We are.
Yeah, we have a lot to cover, so we're going to try to move through this pretty quickly. We do have some slides as well to show folks, but it's no surprise we're in a housing crisis here in the Verde Valley. Much of the West, in fact, is also in the same boat, but this hits really close to home, and so recently the City of Sedona conducted a study, a housing assessment, and we piggybacked on that study and hired Elliot Pollock to give us sort of the lay of the land of what we have on the ground right now and what we need going forward. So anecdotally, we all understand that we're really in a bad situation. Anyone who's tried to move here, either to buy a home or get a place to rent, has faced many challenges, and this is affecting our economy in a bunch of different ways. We're going to talk a lot about that. But before we do, and before I have our guests introduce themselves, I want to just take a second to let everyone know who else has sponsored this study. This was a regional effort because we all know that it affects each and every one of our communities here. So, of course, the City of Sedona, we have them to thank first and foremost. Cottonwood, Clarkdale, Town of Jerome. We have Yavapai College also helped sponsor this, as well as Yavapai County. I think I mentioned Camp Verde, maybe I didn't. I'll mention it twice. All right. And of course, VV Rio. Yeah. And so let's go ahead and have our guests introduce themselves. Mary, we're going to start with you.
Okay. I am Mary Chicoine. I am the Executive Director of the Verde Valley Regional Economic Organization, VV Rio. We had the opportunity to actually sort of facilitate the coming together of this entire process, which was very exciting. And VV Rio takes on regional issues like that in helping to provide research and support for programs and projects throughout the Verde Valley.
Mm-hmm. Great. Mr. Corbin?
Well, as a city manager of Cottonwood, we've experienced the housing shortage personally, whether it be we've had people turn down job offers or turn down interviews for jobs, whether it's with the city or our other employers. When I talk to our other employers in town and ask how the city can help, they're like, well, build 1 million houses or something so they can have people have a place to live, because that is the number one reason they haven't been able to keep or attract employees. Mm-hmm. So this is real, and until we address the housing issues, it'll hamper our economic growth and development for the very near future.
All right, very good. Okay, well let's kick things off here. Though this is a regional problem, regional issue, we're going to focus more on Cottonwood specifically today. So let's talk about the average household size and median age. And just viewer discretion advised, we're going to show some slides that are a little disturbing. They're going to show some disturbing trends. But this is all very important information, and we have to try to get ahead of this so we can try to correct and provide for a better economy going forward. So, Ms. Chicoine, what do you have to report on that?
Well, I think the glaring thing is the aging population that we have in the Verde Valley. I mean, Cottonwood's average median age is 33.8, but everyone else is far above that. And since 2010, the average median age has increased by about 6 years in the Verde Valley. Mm-hmm. What that says is that we are losing the diversity of population, sort of the fabric of our communities, in that we don't have the families and the younger people, and it's more of a moving towards retirement when you think of, the median age of about 52 in the Verde Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nothing to add there. It impacts our schools. It impacts our ability to attract and retain qualified employees. And when I think about city services, parks and recreation, mm-hmm. We staff our pools with teenagers, with young kids. And as families move away because they don't have a place to live, it impacts all the services as a city we provide. Mm-hmm. When I think of schools closing because there's not enough enrollment, those all impact community, mm-hmm. which I know is very important, that we retain our small town feel as a community, and we're not going to do that if we continue to lose the youth.
Mm-hmm. And there's another slide that I found very interesting, the tenure of age by householder, which I think speaks to what Mary was saying earlier, that our retirees are definitely moving in full force. Our youth, our young families are leaving.
Right, and the drop is dramatic. Mm-hmm. Throughout the Verde Valley.
Yeah, we lost in every age until the age 60.
Yep.
So in all age groups under 60, we lost folks mm-hmm. in the last 5 years.
Okay.
10 years, sorry.
And it would be interesting to see, even if we were to update the study, because this is based on 2018 census, what the numbers would even be like now with the rising cost.
You know, we're not talking about solutions just yet, but I'll give a shout out to Yavapai College and what they're doing over here at the Verde Valley campus, adding the Skilled Trade Center and those kinds of programs so that our young people have a place to go to school and then work. You know, a lot of times they leave and then they can't come back because there's no housing. But if we can keep them here, if we can educate them here and then get good paying jobs here, then we keep our young people.
Okay. All right, and then median and average household incomes. Let's take a look quickly at that slide. And
where that becomes really important is when you look at how much people need to spend for their housing. Usually there's a projection of 30 to 35% of income. Well, when you look at the cost of housing in the Verde Valley and you look at what the median or average income is, it's pretty glaring because there aren't many houses, even apartments, that fit the bill for someone to be able to afford housing at the income levels that we have here in the Verde Valley.
When you look at the Cottonwood's median average income at $46,000, that means they have about $1,000 a month if you go to the 30% to spend towards housing. If you tried to buy a house in town recently or rent an apartment, you know that you're pushing the limits of finding a decent place to live.
right, yeah, and I don't want to hop around too much on the slides, but I did notice later on in the slides the average cost of rent here. And
Yes.
again, I think those numbers are a bit skewed because they're so, even though they're 2 years old, 3 years old, they're quite outdated.
They're really conservative based, but I think what's so dramatic, we look at how the challenges 2 or 3 years ago, and they've gotten dramatically worse since then. The issue hasn't gotten better.
Right, definitely not. All right, so it looks to me like Cottonwood is, we're remaining the youngest community in the valley, but we're also the least paid.
Correct.
We're in the least
Correct.
per household.
Not a great combination when you're trying to raise kids.
Sure.
No.
Sure. Okay, let's move on then and talk about our housing inventory. So we have in Cottonwood, I guess in the Verde Valley, we'll say we're quite shy of apartment style, more affordable housing stock.
Yes.
But in Cottonwood, we have the most of any other community in the valley. So that's a good thing, but we're still a little bit shy where we need to be.
We still can't meet the state or national average for high density, for apartments, for duplexes. We don't have enough multifamily units even to meet average demands. And while Cottonwood is close and the highest in the Verde Valley, it's still not enough. And without that multifamily units, without whether it's duplexes, triplexes, infill projects of 8 apartments or larger complexes, without those, our folks aren't going to be able to find a place to live.
Right, and if you look at the numbers, I mean, there are something like 33,000 residents in the Verde Valley, and we've only got 1,450 apartments. The bulk of them are in Cottonwood, which I think has the impact of keeping the age younger here, but it also then means a lot of employees from our other communities are moving to Cottonwood because that's where the housing is available.
Right. Okay. We blame a lot of the lack of housing on short-term rentals. I think this slide, seasonal housing units, might try to touch some of that.
It does, Mayor, but it's just, I think it's an undercount. When I talk to my counterparts and our friends from Sedona, it's, I believe, over 10% of their housing units are short-term rentals. It makes an impact. And what that does is that takes out long-term rentals. So then there's no permanent residents there. There's no people who live and work in the same community. And then the homes that have turned into short-term rentals. So now you, instead of having neighborhoods that know each other and talk and volunteer, you have people come in and go in every weekend. And that makes it very hard to live and work in your same community if there aren't any units.
Sure. All right, so we're sitting at 6.3%, but you feel like that's low. It's still less than half of what Sedona believes they have in their community. But
Correct.
yeah. Okay. All right, let's talk about the average sale price of homes, which I'm just astounded at that. And again, these numbers are...
Throw it away.
Yeah.
Throw it away. We got numbers earlier this year, and earlier this year, I believe it was March, so the first quarter's months, Sedona, and I know I work for Cottonwood, but Sedona's were just so extreme, it sticks in your head, was $880,000 was the average house price.
Yep.
So I talked to their city manager not too long ago, and it is now at $998,000.
Wow.
It is currently almost $1 million. The average, finding a place is just very difficult to afford. Currently, Cottonwood is over $300,000 for our average price.
Okay. All right. And then the gross rent, 2019 median gross rent, still hovering less than $1,000, but I think, again, these numbers are just hard to rely on.
Yeah, if you jump to the page that says HUD Fair market rents, Mayor, those are a lot more current.
Okay.
And it shows the 2020 number for Cottonwood is over $1,000 for the average. So that's from studio to your 2 and 3 bedroom. That's probably closer to reality, I believe. Most apartment complexes, 2 or 3 beds are going to be between $1,200 and $1,500 right now.
Yeah.
And if we think back to the previous slide, when we looked at how much income needs to be going to, to housing, even at the rental levels, this is above what most of the residents of Cottonwood can afford at those median levels.
And remember, not all rent includes electricity, water, sewer, and those kinds of bills on top of that, cable on top of that.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, like I said, we have a lot of information to get through.
Yep.
We have to take a quick 1-minute break, but when we get back, we're going to keep painting the picture of what we have on the ground, and then later on in the segment, we're going to talk about the solutions. Okay?
Great.
So please stick around, and we'll be back in just 1 minute. Thanks.
Terrifying jobs, high-flying linemen, take 3.
Josh, this is an absolutely terrifying job. Why do you do it?
It's a very demanding job, but very rewarding and exciting.
How much energy are you actually working with up there?
500,000 volts of electricity.
It's definitely not my line of work. Does anything shock you?
Yeah, distracted drivers terrify me.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host today, Mayor Tim Elinski. With me is Mary Chicoine from Vivi Rio. She's the Executive Director for the Verde Valley Regional Economic Organization. We have Ron Corbin. He's our City Manager for the City of Cottonwood. And we are going over this housing study that we've collaborated with all the other communities in the valley here. It's conducted by Elliot Pollock. And right now we're just talking about the conditions on the ground right now in Cottonwood specifically. And then later on in the show, we're going to talk about some of the solutions that Cottonwood is looking to hopefully alleviate some of the problems that we're experiencing. So we're going to start off here talking about the housing cost burden by community. And this is, again, one of the more disturbing parts of this slide. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Mary, let's start with you.
Sure. What this slide shows is exactly how many people living in Cottonwood, for example, are paying more than they really should be, which means they become very cash poor to buy other things like food. And we're at 40.6% of the residents in Cottonwood that are at 40% when the ideal would be 30 or possibly 35% of their income going towards housing.
And the national average, sorry to interrupt you, but I think I saw it in the slide here somewhere.
I think the national average is 30%.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds
Arizona is
about right.
about 30% as well. Yeah.
Quite a bit higher then.
Yes.
Okay. Ron, do you have anything to add?
Well, it's just an example of, we were talking on break about where our employees live. And it's interesting, in Cottonwood, 70% of our citizens work outside of Cottonwood. So they live here because it is the most affordable housing around. The county's starting to do better in Camberta and a few other places. But even with that many people leaving town, still 40% of our residents are overburdened with housing costs.
Got it. Okay, I want to talk about this affordability gap. I have a hard time with this slide, so I'm hoping that somebody can help me understand it.
Yeah, we'll just, we can only leave it up for a second because it is kind of confusing. And I would go to the last page there that talks about the Cottonwood affordability gap for the slideshow. What it means is that according to this information, again, most of it's based on census data and other figures, but it looks like we have more high-end housing than needed. And by high-end, I mean people who make between $70,000 and $150,000. Looks like we have enough inventory for them. The problem is to see the big gap in the middle where we don't have enough housing. This is forcing those people to buy into this area. This is the only option they have, so then they become house poor. They are paying more than 30% of their income into housing. So because there's more here, they are occupying those. But then that actually creates less actual inventory for people who could afford this because it's being purchased by people who would rather spend less money on housing if they could. And so then when you go to the other end, the poor end, we clearly have a gap of affordable housing for middle to low income folks. And so it's just a good example that no matter where we put housing, whether it's on the higher end, the middle, or the low, or anywhere in between, it makes a dent. It begins to add inventory so that hopefully we have a more normalized curve. But it doesn't matter if you have a gap in one area or the other if it's not affordable.
Right.
And if there's clearly not enough, even by our own curves, without enough housing, people are having to be creative in their housing solutions.
Sure.
Right, and I think what pointed out when we did the study, it wasn't just sort of the workforce type housing that we need to address a diverse housing in the Verde Valley so that there at all levels we have gaps in sort of how we should be looking at our housing issues.
Sure. Okay. And then affordable housing demand just from employment growth. And again, I think these numbers are a little I don't think they address the fact that we're already in a situation where we need additional housing. This is talking about growth from today forward.
And it's talking, like you said, Mayor, about economic growth.
Right.
This doesn't take into account people just moving here. So we have people from the Valley, from the Phoenix area, that are moving up here, taking up housing. We have people from other states buying homes with cash here. That's taken up. So this growth doesn't take into account all those other factors. If we just added 241 units, you'd think we'd be making a dent. But unfortunately, other people want to live here, people that don't want to work, or people who weren't originally thinking about want to live here. So this is a minimalist point of view, in my opinion. It's an undercount of our need.
Okay. Yeah, and I think we're starting off at a deficit where we already don't have enough housing, so that 241 units, again, is just for economic growth.
Right.
In the next 5 years. That's how many units we need.
Exactly.
And so the next slide shows that deficit as you were talking about. So our total need is 600 units, 611 units. And again, that's current need, economic growth need, doesn't take into account families whose children are grown and want to live near their parents. People are moving from other areas. That doesn't take any natural growth that we would normally see in a city.
Okay. All right. I think that kind of wraps up the high-level stuff for kind of where we are, unless there's anything else that you wanted to bring up.
No, it's all bad. I got no good news on that. Clearly, the study showed what we knew, and that we have a problem. One of the reasons we did the study is we're hoping that this will show investors data that they can make more analytical decisions based on our stories that we like to tell, all the realities that we have lived through. So one of the reasons this was done was to provide data. And I think Vivi Rio and all the partners did a good job of putting this together.
And then what's the plan with this study to update it periodically? Have we discussed this with some of the other communities?
We have not, because the first step is implementation of the solutions. So we just actually this morning, Mary got a copy of the, I believe a final or almost final copy of our 5-year plan. So it's really about implementing the 5-year plan and then reassessing whether we need to do another one. The key with that will be the situation on the ground. The situation today is already very different than it was 2 years ago when we started this. So it'll be interesting to see nationally what happens. I was told yesterday that Tucson has the most expensive property in the United States right now. So to buy a piece of land in the city of Tucson proper, which forces people to rural areas, which forces people to find other jobs and other solutions. So I think until we get some normalization across the country on real estate and land and houses get developed, we'll have to reassess after that, but I think there's still a lot of unknowns that are coming at us.
Certainly.
And I think we might look at reassessing when we get the new census data in too, because that's what's shaped this from 2018.
Right.
I think that'll be available come August. So I think having a conversation of looking at it and saying, okay, what charts do we want to update to see the real picture? I mean, it's going to be worse. I mean, that's a foregone conclusion, but to have some actual numbers related to that.
Right. Okay. Well, as bleak as all this information is, there's also a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. And I think one of the most, the things I'm most proud of that Cottonwood did with City of Sedona is we co-hired a housing expert.
Right.
Are in the process of.
In the process.
He or she's not hired yet, but we're
Correct.
out looking. So, which is a big deal. And I think it shows the regionalism that we all adhere to and collaboration. So I think that's one of the biggest, most important things we could do. And we're all putting a lot of faith in that person. And there'll be some pressure, I'm sure.
Lots of pressure.
Yeah, lots of pressure. But, and then we're going to talk more when we get back from break on some of the other very local solutions that we're going to do here in Cottonwood to help the situation. So, quick 1-minute break. Don't go anywhere and come back and join us.
There are people who struggle with addiction and homelessness. Sometimes it may feel like there is nothing we can do to help.
But there is. You can make a tax-deductible donation and help those in need transition away from homelessness.
When you give someone a handout, you could actually be supporting an addiction.
A better life starts with better health, especially for those living in the streets.
Support solutions, not addictions. You can make a difference. Visit CottonwoodCares.com.
Looking for a ride to Sedona? Hop on the new Verde Shuttle at the Cottonwood Library and go everywhere you want to go in West Sedona, uptown and south to Poco Diablo Resort. It's just that easy. Looking for a better way to commute between Cottonwood and Sedona? The Verde Shuttle buses are brand new, a cool, clean, comfortable ride for only $2 each way or $3 for an all-day pass. It's just that easy. Check out details at verdeshuttle.com or ask Google Maps for transit directions. It's just that easy.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Mayor Tim Elinski. We have Mary Chicoine with us from the Verde Valley Regional Economic Organization, Vivi Rio, and Ron Corbin, who is our city manager for the city of Cottonwood. We're discussing this housing study that we conducted with Sedona and the rest of the valley here, and talked about the conditions on the ground as they are or were 2 years ago, maybe a little bit outdated. We're waiting for some more accurate information, but the bottom line is it's fairly bleak, as we all know. So now we're going to talk about solutions and what Cottonwood is doing specifically to help address some of these challenges that we're facing. So, Ron, I'd like you to start off maybe discussing this toolkit that was part of their study.
Yeah, our consultants, they did a great job of providing options for us to start looking at things. Some cost money, some don't. And so given our limited amount of time, I'll just jump to some of the things we're already doing. One of the first things we do is we look at our zoning and our planning ordinances and regulations. And so if you've been following along for the last couple of years of the city of Cottonwood, about once every 2 or 3 months, we have a new update to our code in front of council. And part of that is to make sure that the government doesn't get in the way of opportunities and development and people's ability to develop their private property for housing. Just the other day, we were looking at a silly rule. We didn't change the density, but we made it easier for people to get to the density that is already allowed. Again, not trying to change the community makeup or the feel of our community as laid out in our general plan, but making it so that we're out of the way, so we're not a hindrance. So that's one of the main free things we can do that I think is having a great impact. We continually review open space rules and those kinds of things, making sure that we're balancing growth with community, with the environment and diversity and sustainability and all those kinds of things. But that's the first thing we've done. As listed in his plan. The other thing he talks about in the toolkit is collaboration. And Mayor, you've already hit on that. We've been doing that. When I first got here, I believe it was Supervisor Garrison put the first housing group together. Since I was here, it's been talked about in the community for years. I think Sedona Mayor Moriarty talks about housing groups years ago, but even before she was mayor. But we've been working together. And as you mentioned before we went on the last break, that housing manager partnership where Sedona pays part, Cottonwood pays part, so that we can get a regional approach to a solution. Sedona has challenges. Cottonwood has challenges. We're not going to solve this problem by ourselves. And so I'm very excited about that partnership where we have one employee that will be looking out, in my opinion, for the entire Verde Valley. Going to be our employees, actually going to be Sedona's employees, sponsored by Cottonwood. But this person will be mandated to look at the whole region because the solution isn't one. And if I can just hog one more second, I just want to give a shout out to Sedona. And I know we're here talking about Cottonwood, but this is the kind of thing Cottonwood is looking for. And I believe this is the kind of thing Camp Verde's been doing already in other examples, and Clarkdale and others are looking to do. And they went into a public-private partnership with a developer. And so they were able to contribute a significant amount of money to an apartment project. I believe it's like 45 units, 40 something units, 50 years workforce housing guaranteed. That is significant. So you'll have to be employed. It's not meant for the low income. There's other opportunities for that. It's not meant for high end. If you income out, you'll have to move at the end of your lease. But it's 50 years, 45 units, workforce housing. They have to have a job in Sedona. The developers made concessions. The city has made concessions. It's a partnership because they know the importance of having employees that work in the community.
Right.
And the exciting part about it is that if there are 46 or more employees that are moving into that, they may be moving out of Cottonwood, which then allows for housing within Cottonwood. What I've also seen really exciting, and I know Ron and I talk about this and some of the things that Cottonwood is doing, even on changing simple zoning. And I think we need to keep reminding the community, if you will, we're not looking at building complexes that have hundreds of apartments in it, that there are solutions that we call infill, where you can put one or two, workforce houses in the middle, or the simple changes of zoning that make it more appealing for a developer to come in. And even if it's 4 houses on one place, if you do 10 of them, all of a sudden you've got 40 units. And I think those are what's really exciting in the creativity that's coming out.
Very good. All right. Well, again, it's a very complex problem, but I'm pleased to see, and I know that you've been working really hard with the planning department to make sure that we, as government, do get out of the way and provide opportunities for folks to get in and develop their property to the utmost advantage, as quickly as possible. I agree. We've got several projects in the pipeline. P&Z approved a couple last night. I forget the number of apartments and units they approved. The other thing is, we've still got single-family homes going through. The Vineyards is moving through. We have units going up there. We have Mesquite Hills, a few hundred homes there that'll be going into single-family. May or may not be regular workforce housing, but again, we've talked about that curve and having to provide housing throughout the breadth of opportunities, but we also have other apartments coming in. We have a project across from the hospital that'll provide several hundred units for apartments. Again, I think it's a multi-pronged approach, zoning, projects, helping them get off the ground. The housing manager will help us find some housing credits, and there's lots of federal and state money. We'll be working on that. And then, we're also looking at a couple other options. We approved
with our homeless coalition, some opportunities for that, for that population so that they can have homes. I'm looking forward to that project coming to fruition. I know that some of the council members are looking at low-income housing, trying to get some more housing credits here for the community. We're looking at that. And then our workforce housing. One of the projects currently being considered by our city council is a project that would be a down payment assistance program. So we can help employees find a house in the Verde Valley and afford to buy it. A lot of our council is very leans towards wanting to own home. They believe in the American dream of owning land, owning the house. And it's those kinds of things that we're going to try to chip away at this problem. Again, there's no one solution. We've got to hit it from all angles, but I'm impressed at the way Cottonwood is continuing to look at our council at ways to solve this problem.
And hasn't the council also have a contract with Housing Solutions of Northern Arizona? They're experts in Flagstaff. Instead of sort of reinventing the wheel that I know Cottonwood and Sedona have taken advantage of to help with some of those very programs you're talking about.
Absolutely, great partnership, and if it comes to fruition, we'll have a housing counselor right here in Cottonwood that I think will be a great asset to help people get into their first homes. It's just positive all around.
Yeah, and multi-pronged, I think, is really the key. Not one solution is going to fit a problem this complex, so we have to provide lots of multiple solutions and do the best we can.
Yeah, if I can talk about one other solution, if anybody watches the broadcast, I hope more watch yours than watch mine, Mr. Mayor. But one of the things that the city's interested in is listening to projects. So we are currently talking to people at the college and otherwise about 3D printed homes, and maybe working with Habitat for Humanity and building some there and some other opportunities. So we're open book, and council has shown interest in considering projects that may cost the city a little bit of money, but in return we get workforce housing. So I just want to put that out there that we're open to it. We don't have all the solutions. We will not be able to do this without the work of private investors, private developers, and private landowners. So if people have ideas or ways, feel free to reach out to City Hall and give me a call.
Certainly, and I think that's really my takeaway from all this is that we've found ourselves in a really dire predicament, but so too has the rest of the nation, pretty much, at least the Western nation. So, but what we do have here in the Verde Valley is a very passionate, driven community. We've got a lot of partners that show up when we need them, like the college, for example. I think we have all the solutions we need right here to really tackle this problem. So I really look forward to, one, the city doing the best it can to just get out of the way and be the best partner we can possibly be, and then bringing in those private developers, those other institutions to help solve this problem. Make sure we've got a strong community that can attract the workforce, retain that workforce, and make sure that we have all the services available here to provide for the retirees that want to move out here and enjoy the beautiful Verde Valley that we have to offer. So
the one that we all enjoy.
We all enjoy. That's right. Yeah. Any other closing thoughts?
No.
I just shout out to the collaboration again, and VV Rio and the college and all of our city partners and Sedona for taking the lead. No one of us could have done this by ourselves. So shout out to all the elected officials and managers and administrators who have participated.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again to both of you for taking the time out of your day to sift through this thick report in just 30 minutes. I can't believe we did it, but we did. So I know it's a lot of information, but again, appreciate your time. Keep doing the great work you do, and hopefully we'll get to some solutions here before too long.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, that's it for Inside Cottonwood. We will see you again next month. Thanks so much. Take care.